Alan Baxter, welcome to This Is Horror podcast as part of the House of Bad Memories podcasting weekend. How you doing?
I'm well, thanks for having me. We were just talking before, and you said you're only into hour five, so I'm fresh as a daisy still at this point.
Yeah,
See what
yeah,
happens about 10 hours from now.
yeah. Well, people are gonna find out. It's all gonna be recorded. But I mean, I was looking at when we last spoke for a full This Is Horror podcast, and unbelievably, but I probably should believe it because the records don't lie. It was, in fact, March 2020. So we've gone 3.5 years without having you on the podcast. I don't know if this is the point where you stand up and decide to leave because you're offended that we
You
took
guys,
so goddamn long.
yeah. No, that's amazing. No, I knew it had been a while. I didn't think it was that long. I remember that I was saying to Bob before. I remember that I was having internet problems, and I ended up driving to the top of the hill,
Yeah.
like 4 miles from where I live, with my phone to get the best 3G reception that I could because I kept dropping out. So I remember sitting in my car in the dark at like 10 o'clock at night or something. But there you go. That was 3 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, that was
Well,
right
yeah, we
before
had the
COVID
kind
kicked
of.
up the arse then. That was right as COVID
Right.
kicked in.
Right. Well, it must have been, yeah, because I mean, I
And I remember.
remember it was. Go
Oh,
on.
sorry. Yeah, I was going to say. I remember that I was at a convention. I was a guest at Supernova in March, and they were worried that they were going to get shut down because of numbers of people gathering. And then the government on the
Right.
Saturday they said, as from midnight Sunday, we're limiting gatherings to 500 people. That was right at the start of COVID, and of course the restrictions got stricter and stricter rapidly. But that was the first level of restrictions and so the Supernova was a big pop culture convention. They were super pleased because they would get to open all day Saturday like Sunday like they planned. And yeah, that was the start of it, and that was mid March. So that would have been right around the last time we talked.
Yeah. Yeah. And because I know it was all kicking off in China kind of about December 2019. So then it was being covered in the news that like China and Japan kind of December, January. But yeah, it wasn't until really March where it started becoming a thing,
Yeah, well,
in the
hence
UK and
COVID-19, not
America, and
COVID-20.
presumably, yeah, Clue is in the name, people.
Yeah,
And you know, at that time, I mean, I was relocating back to Japan, so I actually arrived back in Japan the day before they stopped letting anyone else into Japan. So I was one of the last people to get back in. And if I'd have booked my plane ticket one day later, well, there would have been no plane, and I would have had to have waited until October or so. So it was,
yeah, because a friend of mine
fortunate
was
timing.
working there. Joe Anderton, actually, Joanne Anderton. She's a superb author. Everybody should read her stuff. She's brilliant. But she was living in Japan at the time. She was teaching, doing the ESL thing in Japan, and then she got an opportunity to come back. I can't remember exactly when it was, but it was maybe June, July, August, something like that. And it was like, here's a window to come back. If you don't take it, we don't know when the next one is. And it cost us thousands of dollars. But she did it, and she was
Right.
sharing these photos. She was the only person on the plane, and then she was the only person in Sydney Airport when she arrived and stuff like that. But she took that opportunity to slip back into the country because she didn't know when she would otherwise. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember when, like, I came back to Japan, obviously, like that, because they knew that they were going to stop letting people in the next day. So they're being super vigilant and stuff, and like kind of having a good look at you, checking your temperature and all that. But like I was fine on the flight until about 15 minutes before landing. We started getting really insane turbulence. Also, I can never sleep on planes, so I'm getting pretty sleep deprived at this point, which makes me feel a bit sick. And then Like I'm trying to concentrate on not actually being sick, but the concentration was so much that I was started sweating, and I thought like I'm looking like I'm breaking out in a fever. So literally, when I landed, I just went to the bathroom to fucking pull myself together. It's like you can't go to
We're
try
not
and
going to let
get
me
through immigration when you're literally visibly sweating. It's like I knew I didn't have COVID, and I'd taken a test and I had like, the test to show, but it's like, well, you've got a test that says one thing, but your sweating, panicking face is saying quite another. But
in. Oh
it
man, what a
it
weird
worked out
time.
okay in the end, but bad timing.
Yeah.
You probably look like John Lithgow from Twilight Zone.
Yeah. Yeah, Jesus Christ.
Mhm.
But I mean, talking about those 3 years, I mean, I wanted to ask, as I often do when we get a returning guest, what the biggest changes, both personally and professionally, have been. Obviously, having gone through a pandemic is one of those, but I know that you've had like a number of books out, including Sallow Bend and The Gulp. So talk us through the highlights, both personally and professionally.
Yeah, right. Far out. I mean, it takes some figuring out in a way, trying to sort of remember how things went. I know that when the first restrictions on the pandemic and everything kicked in, because I run a kung fu school, like my day job is
Yeah.
all sorts of different times of the day and night, but running classes, and of course all that got shut down. Um, and I had to pivot to doing Zoom classes. And that really took up so much of my brain space. So my kid was home and we were having to homeschool. I was having to um, do Zoom classes. And like I mentioned before, right at that time, our internet was really dodgy. So because I was
Mm.
allowed to travel for work, I would take laptop and phone and gear and stuff into the studio where I would normally teach and set up with the laptop and the tripod to use the broadband that was available in town. Um, and I could teach that way, and I would have sort of a stable signal. Um, and so at that first sort of 6 months of things, when everything just turned to shit and nobody knew what was going on, I kind of hardly wrote much at all because there was so much else I was trying to get my head around and deal with. Um, but because of that as well, I ended up writing The Gulp because the year before, for a joke, I'd written The Roo, which
Yeah.
turned out to be one of my most popular books. Like it's just,
Yeah.
it's. I wish all my books sold as well as The Roo does. And it was a bit of a gag, but it's really sort of resonated with people, and that made me think at the time maybe there is a market for really Australian horror stories. I mean, that one's really gonzo, that one's deliberately kind of a homage to every gonzo bonkers creature feature ever happened before. But it was unapologetically Australian. Um, and it was super popular, especially in the US. And so I thought, well, maybe I ought to stop setting stuff in ambiguous settings that sort of could be here, could be there. Maybe I need to really lean into and embrace that Australian vibe. And for a long time, I'd been toying with the idea of my own sort of castle rock or whatever, where I could create a fictional geography that was really Australian. Um, and I hadn't done it. I kept putting it off and kept putting it off. And then the success of The Roo, followed by the great upheaval at the start of COVID, I just went, fuck it. I'm just going to start writing a few of these stories instead because I feel like I'm still producing work. I don't know what I'm going to do with them. Um, and I had this idea that it would just, I wanted this weird, isolated Australian harbour town that would share. It was sort of a bit like an Australian Innsmouth, but also a bit like an Australian Derry or Castle Rock and those kind of vibes. And that became a bit of a pandemic project that because I could focus on these smaller ideas. And I ended up writing 5 novellas that sort of linked and cross-referenced each other and then told a bigger story across the course of all 5. And that became The Gulp. And so because it was in some ways a niche project like that, and because everything was up in the air and I had no idea what sort of publishers might be interested, I just decided to put it out independently, like I'd done with the Roo. And it turned out to be really popular as well. I was really pleased with how well received it was. And then the following year, I ended up doing it again and wrote The Fall with another 5 that were all interlinked with the first 5, and now across all 10, and both books is an even bigger story. And hopefully at some point I'll write a third one. I've got the ideas and plans for most of it. So in the early part of the pandemic, that's sort of what became my focus, and it was largely everything else that was going on that kind of pushed me towards doing that, because the novel I was writing at the time, I had to put aside because I didn't have the brain capacity to keep that kind of big picture in mind. And then subsequently after that, as we started getting a bit more used to things and we've found a bit of equilibrium, then I got back to the novels, and subsequently that's when I wrote Sallow Bend and so on. And then that came out with Cemetery Dance at the end of last year. So yeah, it was an interesting time. But yeah, it's funny how adversity kind of creates these sort of diversions that we might not have done otherwise. And the other thing that I did, actually, now that I think about it, is that at the start of the pandemic, I wrote something just for my kid, who would have been 7 at the time, or coming up 7. And it was always like, I write for adults. So I wrote a middle grade, because my kid's a pretty advanced reader. And so I wrote a middle grade fantasy novel that was all sort of dragons and pirates and all that cool shit that I wanted to do. And I didn't know what I was going to do with it, but it ended up being like this sort of 50,000 word middle grade sort of fantasy novel with, the character was named after my kid, one of the main characters, and all this stuff was going on. And I just produced one really nice little hardcover, and it said special edition 1 of 1 on the back, and just kind of presented that to sort of help the sort of pandemic times, trying to find new things and bright things in that dark and weird time. And we keep talking about, or I keep talking about, can I take that to a publisher? And I keep getting told, no, you wrote that for me. That's special. That's mine. So it might be the book I wrote that literally one copy exists and that's that. But who knows? I keep tempting, we could share the royalties, like as capitalism gets its grip, it might change the attitude. But so I ended up, the pandemic time meant the Gulp and the Fall happened, and I wrote a middle grade fantasy novel of which one copy exists. So yeah, that's kind of what I've been doing over the last few years. And there's been several novels now since Sallow Bend came out. New one is coming out, Blood Covenant's coming out with Cemetery Dance in May, and a new novel has just gone to my agent like last week. So I've been busy since.
Yeah. And in terms of the middle grade novel, I mean, as you say, wait for capitalism to get its claws in, or university debt or something. There'll be a reason he needs those royalty checks. So
it might be shit. I might go to publishers and they're like, look, don't do this. Stick to the adult horror novels. I don't know. It was enjoyed in the house with the audience of 3, so it's not exactly it's not exactly a wide pool to judge it by, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Well, there's 2 blurbs or 3 blurbs if you want to go full Garth Marenghi and blurb your own book.
That's true. Yeah. I could become the Garth Marenghi of middle grade fantasy fiction.
Yeah, well, I accidentally almost became Garth Marenghi earlier when I was speaking about House of Bad Memories, and I nearly said it's the funniest book I've read, but I meant that I'd written. It's like, wow, it's quite an endorsement for your own fiction.
But House of Bad Memories by Michael David Wilson. The funniest book I've ever read, Michael David Wilson.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be a solid cover,
Yeah. No, I mean, like, sometimes I toy with these ridiculous ideas just basically because I think it would be funny to me. I mean, I've even like toyed with the idea, and I might do it one day, like putting out a short story collection that's like self-titled, like Michael David Wilson by Michael David Wilson, because we see that with bands,
Yeah,
like Metallica by Metallica, but you don't see that with authors
yeah,
much, and I'd quite like to do
yeah.
that.
Michael David Wilson's new novel, self-titled. It's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
We'll
then
have
if you did do that,
self-titled,
you would
untitled,
subsequently
the
have
black
to
book, the
self-blurb
white
it
book.
as well.
What
So,
what was that? Sorry?
sorry, I was going to say, if you did do that, you would subsequently have to self-blurb it as well. So
Yeah. You
there's
might
nothing
as
on
well
the
just go all in at that point, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
But I mean, you mentioned independently publishing the Gulp and independently publishing the Ruse. So, I mean, has that experience and those experiments in independent publishing, has it changed kind of your perspective on publishing or your model going forward? I mean, you've also now got books coming out via Cemetery Dance, but I suppose, do you view indie publishing in a more favorable light? How do you decide whether to send it out to other publishers or your agent, and whether to just go the indie route?
Um, I've always had a lot of respect for indie publishing. I kind of started out that way. Right back in the beginning, my original novel, the first novel I published was Realm Shift. That I originally went the traditional route with that, got an agent. That ended up at acquisitions twice with two different publishers, and both times didn't get quite over the line. Um, and this is a long time ago. This is like coming on 20 years ago now. And back then I was like, well, fuck it. I'm just going to put it out myself and write the next one and see if I can generate some interest that will maybe then, you know, help to sell the next thing. Like, for example, like you can tell how long ago it was because at Smashwords, one of the independent publishers where they do ebooks, they were new at the time. And there's the URL of the book, there's a big number at the end, and that's the number of the book it is. And they're up into the multiple millions and stuff now. Realm Shift is like 397 or something. So literally within the first few hundred ebooks in that sort of first great renaissance of that independent publishing. But the thing is that what that taught me really quickly was that while it was becoming easier to do with ebooks and print on demand and everything else, I realized I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to have those skills of layout and managing all that sort of stuff. And it's like, I want to write and let publishers do that stuff that they're good at. Griffinwood Press picked up Realm Shift and Mage Sign. And then off the back of that, Harper Voyager, HarperCollins in Australia picked up the Alex Kane trilogy, and sort of things carried on. And I've had work with various, publishers, sort of mid-sized independent press and stuff like PS Publishing and Cemetery Dance and whatever. But I've also had some independent press not really come to the party as much as they should. I've had some presses go under and take books down, and then we've had to work on getting the rights back and figuring out what's going on. And back in whenever it was, 2019, I guess, I think, or no, the start of 2020, I think it was, when the Rue came out, because that was such a ridiculous book, and it was a novella, and it was just gonzo, and it was like, well, who the fuck would I send that to? Like, and because I'd had issues with some smaller presses and stuff, I was like, you know what, maybe I ought to get my eye in again on doing some stuff independently, so that no matter what else happens, maybe I've always got a handful of books that aren't contracted to a publisher that might go under or that won't run into those problems. And so I used the Rue as practice to self-publish again, and sort of had to update my skills to where things stood all these years later. And it went quite well. And then, as I said, that because with the pandemic and the Gulp being that pandemic project and what I thought at the time was actually quite niche, I ended up going, well, you know what, I'm just going to put that out as well. So the Rue, the Gulp, and the Fall are all independently done. And then I've done a 6-story sort of mini collection. I've written several times for the Snafu anthologies. which is basically military horror and monsters. That's the sort of remit. One of those stories is the one that I was fortunate enough that got picked up for Love, Death and Robots. That was in Vaulted Halls Entombed, that was in Snafu Survivor of the Fittest. So I put together a mini collection of 5 previously published Snafu stories, and I wrote a new one that hadn't been in any of those Snafu anthologies, and I independently published that little collection as well. So at this point, oh, and I did one more. I just remembered. There's another short novella called Golden Fortune Dragon Jade, which was like a sort of wuxia Chinese Australian fantasy novella that was written for a project that never really got much off the ground. And so I put that out independently as its own little version as well. So I've got this handful of stuff that I've done independently, and that stuff is always sort of going to be under my control and I can manage that. But the base principle still applies, that I still do prefer to work with a publisher, because all the work involved with the layout and the uploading and managing the files and all that is a pain in the arse. I don't really like it. And whatever reach I may have, having been in this gig for a while, it's only my reach. Whereas if I go with a publisher, you get their reach as well, and you get their, you don't have to pay for the covers and the cover art because they do that. You don't have to pay for the layout because they do that. So, they earn their cut of the royalties by doing that stuff. But then hopefully they have an audience and a sort of marketing that gets more readers in. And at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. I want to focus on the writing and not the publishing, and I want to sort of get as many readers as I can. So I always default to publishers first, but I think I will always have a little sort of side catalog, if you like, of this independently published stuff, because it's just kind of nice to have that there, and that's always as safe as anything like that can be. But I always will default to publishers first. It's that top-down idea, just go for the big publishers, go for the indie publishers, the small press, and just have a handful of self-published stuff on the side.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are increasingly going for, what could, I guess, be termed this hybrid model, where you are primarily, such as yourself, publishing with more traditional publishers, but you've got this little side catalog, almost like an insurance policy. It's like, look, whatever happens, I've got these ones that are completely mine, completely with me. Now, you're talking through the process. I'm wondering, how does your agent figure into this? Like, I mean, even with things like the Rue, did you have a conversation beforehand and say, look, this is what I'm planning to do? Or do you get advice as to whether to put this out yourself or who to send it to?
Interesting situation there. I mean, for a long time, I've just recently signed with a new agent. So I'm with Becky Lejeune with Bond Literary in the US now. And my Australian agent was very much in favour of that, because her position basically was, look, I don't really know horror that well, and I don't have the same contacts. You need someone in the US that knows horror and has the right kind. So she was kind of encouraging for me to kind of level up, if you like, in the agent front on that front. She's Alex Atzett has been a brilliant agent, and we've got all sorts of deals together that way. She got the trilogy through with HarperCollins, for example, here in Australia. So it's been superb, but her focus is a lot more fantasy and children's fiction, and not so much sort of horror thriller, and not so much the US market, which is sort of where we want to reach. But she's always been of the mind, it's like, I'll read anything, and if I think I can sell it, I'll sell it, but otherwise, do what you like with it, kind of thing. And so when it came to something like The Room, it's like, I know there's no point in even approaching her with that, because it's horror, it's so niche, it's so weird, it's a novella, she's going to have real problems selling it. But I would always just let her know what's going on, and she's like, yeah, cool, let me know if I can help. And it was always a really good relationship like that. And same now that I've signed with Bond Literary in the US, there's some stuff from before that's still contracted to Alex, that was stuff that she dealt with, and she made those deals, and that will remain contracted to her. So it's an interesting position to be in. But from this point on, I think everything now will go through Becky at Bond Literary. And I don't know what, if anything, I might subsequently self-publish into the future, and I'll just figure that out, I think, as we go along. At the moment, I'm sort of concentrating on novels and concentrating on trying to hit those sort of bigger, more traditional publishers again. If I do finally get around to writing the third installment in the Gulp books, I might then do that independently as well to match the others. And I would have a conversation with Becky then about that when and if that came up, I guess.
Yeah, and there's so many agents these days, so it begs the question, why Becky and why Bond Literary?
um, it it comes down to, a lot of the time, it comes down to just sort of paying attention to the industry, and sort of who's doing what with who. And it was just one of those sort of situations where I did want to try to get an agent in the US who was more across horror and dark fiction. And then I heard about Becky at Bond because she was working with some authors who I just had a lot of respect for and who do similar stuff to what I do. Like, she's got people like Gemma Files and Todd Kiesling and stuff like that on her catalog. And so I reached out to her on that front because it just felt like a good fit, and I knew that. And people, we talked to each other, and people I talked to were like, "Yeah, she's great," and the work she's doing is clearly great. And then the first Zoom we had, she's wearing a Camp Crystal Lake T-shirt, so you can, sometimes you just know things that you're on the right path. So it just came together like that. It was just one of those sort of opportunity, timing, whatever sort of things. And then when she read stuff and she was like, "Yeah, I think it's good. I think I can work with this," and get made the official sort of offer of rep. So off we go.
All right. Well, yeah, makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I mean the kind of literary agent landscape, it can almost be overwhelming because you've got
Yeah,
so many options and you got so many bad options as well as good options. So you got to kind of almost like wade through
yeah,
and I mean really look at like, well, who can offer me something? Because like I think sometimes we can put agents up on a pedestal, so we're just trying to get an agent, but it's like, no, this is as much a kind of two-way conversation. This is an interview for the author as well as the agent, and
yeah. You
I
you,
think
you don't
we yeah.
yeah you don't have to have an agent. Um, Whereas a good agent can be absolutely amazing. Equally, a bad agent or a bad fit can be a fucking nightmare for both of you.
Yeah.
And it is very much a symbiotic relationship. And much as you kind of sort of in this landscape, as you say, a lot of people are in there, "I just need an agent." It's like, well, no, you don't. You need the right agent, and it is really hard to find the right one. Like, in previously to approaching Becky, I had started collecting a list of agents, and I was paying attention to who was representing who and what sort of things they did. And if they were people I knew and could chat to online or whatever, I was like, "Hey, what's your experience been like with this person?" And that's what a lot of people do, and that's what people need to do, really, to get the feel of whether that person's going to be right for you and whether you're going to be right for that person. Because it's perfectly okay to be an author and go, "I would love you to be my agent, but are you going to do the right thing by me?" Not, "Oh God, yes, please, I just desperately need an agent." It's like, so finding that balance that does work for both people is really important. And it's important for the agent to feel comfortable being able to work with the author and be honest and open and do the best. And it's important for the author to know that that agent is going to be doing the best work they can, and that they're going to be honest with you and everything else. So, like you said, it's a mess. It's something you've got to wade through. But a lot of the time, it just comes down to sitting back and paying a bit of attention, and seeing who's doing what. The same as you would do with a publisher. Like, you wouldn't approach a romance publisher with a hardcore horror, extreme violence novel. Like, it's like you would approach the right publisher for the right work, in the same way you approach the right agent with the right work, and you hope to find that equilibrium. And you're not always going to stick with the same agent. You might not get one. You don't need one. There's there's so many permutations.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's good advice for people. And I mean, to go back to something you said before, you mentioned, putting out a number of stories with the snafu anthologies.
Yeah,
And this might be like a kind of bizarre turn, but you mentioned snafu, and then I think, oh, Jeff Brown, also known as GN Braun. And then I thought, wait, what happened to Jeff? Like, so it's like, hang on, you're asking Alan as a question. Do you know what's happened to Jeff? Yeah, I guess that is where we're going because he did some stuff with this as horror. He was doing so much with military horror and snafu, and I guess like one of his primary social media networks was Facebook. It occurs to me as I'm saying this, it's like not what happened to Jeff, it's what happened to me because I went off Facebook and now I'm like, where's Jeff? And it's like, well,
he's still
you
there.
ran away from him. He's still there. He's still
Yeah.
doing stuff.
So Jeff, I mean, Jeff's a great guy. So Jeff is he's the executive editor of Cohesion Press. Um, so on that side of things, they do the Snafu series of anthologies. So the first one was Snafu, Situation Normal, All Fucked Up, an anthology of military horror, and it was really popular. So then they then developed a line of anthologies, and there's been like I think 13 or 14 of them now, or something, and I think I've been in 7 of them. And then they did for a while. They picked up and started doing novels and stuff like that. That didn't quite work out with the distribution, and they chopped everything back and they gave novels back to authors and just focused on the anthology line. And that works really well. And Tim Miller, who is the sort of main brains behind Love, Death, and Robots and stuff, is a big fan of the Snafu series, along with a number of other things. He's a huge short story fan, which is why several Snafu stories ended up being picked up for Love, Death, and Robots here and there. And so Jeff is still doing all that stuff, and he also owns a abandoned haunted asylum down in country
Yeah.
Victoria.
Yeah.
And so his sort of day job, he runs ghost tours of a haunted asylum. And just next weekend, I think next week, well, no, 2 weeks, Halloween weekend, he's running Asylum Fest, which is the new Australian horror convention, which is going to happen. Last year was the first one. It was kind of a test. This year is the first one where they're going, this is now a regular feature on the calendar. And the plan is that every Halloween weekend, Asylum Fest will be the annual HorrorCon to go to. And it's right on my kid's birthday. So unfortunately, I can't get down for this one. But they've got trade tables, they've got, panels and all that sort of stuff. They've got a short story competition, all that cool stuff that goes along with conventions. So Jeff is still very much around. I don't think he's writing that much himself at this point, but he's running Cohesion Press. He's still doing Snafu anthologies with AJ Spedding. She's a brilliant editor who co-edits with him. He's running the Asylum, and he's in charge. Him and Marty Young. So Marty Young, who originally set up the Australian Horror Writers Association, which is now the Australasian Horror Writers Association. I've been the president of that for the last few years, and I'm actually stepping down this year. That's been around for nearly 20 years. And so Marty, who founded that, and Jeff are the two guys who are mostly in charge of organising Asylum Fest, so that we'll end up with an annual HorrorCon. So yes, Jeff Brown is still a busy fella, and he's still on Facebook.
There you go. Evidently, it's like I'm the problem. I ran away from Facebook. But what I think this shows, and like I guess for this is like quite timely for you because you were kicked off Twitter, so now you're kind of starting again on Blue Sky, and a number of people have voluntarily left Twitter. We're talking to one of them. It's not me, but it is good old Bob Pastorella there, and
Mm-hmm.
it just shows like I guess like how what's the word really just kind of temporary some of these connections can be, and it's like if you lose one network then you can lose like a kind of whole crop of people and connections that you
Yeah.
were talking to, and like I'm not sure what the what kind of the takeaway is there. I mean, I think a good takeaway is have a newsletter list, because that kind of like indie publishing is something you can control.
Yeah, I think the two really important things to have are you have to have your own website, so you have your fixed place on the web, so that if anybody goes, "What happened to Fuck Knuckle? Where did that guy go?" If they search, if nothing else, they're going to come up with a website, and a website at the very least will just have a bio and a contact page. I know there have been editors in the past who've been like, I wanted to reprint a story and just can't reach the author. They don't have a website, they're not on socials or whatever. So I think it's really important that you have that. And it can be a simple free site, just something that will come up when people Google your name, which is a fixed place. And keeping a good newsletter list is also valuable, because that way any communications go directly into people's inboxes, regardless of where else you might be on the web. But yeah, I mean, Twitter was a really interesting one. I've been on Twitter since quite early, back in 2009. I think I was first on there, and it really was home for me online. It was very much the social media of choice. And then fucking Musk shows up and just shits all over everything. So honestly, it'd been getting just worse and worse for the sort of the year or so since he's been in charge. I was really struggling more and more with the ethics of staying on there anyway, just because of the sort of voices that he was amplifying and the way he was managing things. It really was becoming more and more of just a trash fire. But I'd been on there 15 years or whatever. I had 17,000 something followers. And before he took over, it was a great place with great engagement. It was a really nice place to hang out. We would have chats with other authors and editors and publishers, as well as readers and fans in general. It was a good place. So it was kind of hard to give up. But I was really starting to think this place is just a shithole and getting worse. And I was really struggling with the ethics of it. And then I happened to tweet that I can't even remember which particular arsehole it was about now, but the tweet included the line, "We really need the guillotines," in reference to the super rich. And apparently Musk, in his great fragility, or the team, had been setting bots to search tweets for the word guillotine, and were just basically mass suspending accounts on that front for it was incitement to violence, I think, was the official sort of rule that you contravened. And it says, if you disagree with this, let us know. And of course, I sent the thing in, and I was like, what the fuck? And they were like, no, we stand by. Well, they weren't. I'm sure it was just a bot. It was like, no, we stand by. Your account's permanently suspended, and we won't be reversing this decision. So that's it. They made the decision for me, and I got kicked off. The only thing I'm really annoyed about on that front, it was actually a bit of a load off in some ways, much as I am really disappointed to lose the power of that reach, which was valuable for I'm not a big name, and nobody sort of mid-list a name like me. That kind of extra reach was really valuable. But otherwise, the only thing I'm annoyed about is that because they've suspended the account and I can't get into it, I can't now go and delete my tweets. So if I was the plan to leave voluntarily was at some point, and I was getting very close to it, was like at some point I'm just going to download the archive, delete my tweets, and delete the account. And they booted me before I had the chance to do that. So I did download an archive about a year ago. So I've still got a record of most of my history there. But it kind of shits me that if at some point they unsuspend that account, then those tweets come live again, and with all this shit they're doing, like where they're saying, your tweets are now available. If you're here, you agreeing that your tweets can train our AI and stuff like that. So, well, I don't agree with that. I would rather just delete all that, but I haven't got the option. So, with any luck, the servers will just melt down at some point, and Twitter will just cease to exist in any shape or form. It's probably at this point the best thing that can happen for it. It's like taking the old horse out the back and shooting it in the head. It's like, there's nothing left for it now. It's like, yeah.
Yeah, that's that. My experience is pretty much the same as yours, except for getting permanently suspended. It got to the point I was saying this earlier that I was literally having to search my mutuals just to see what they were doing. I had to search "This Is Horror" to find post to repost.
Yeah.
because they weren't showing up in my feed, no matter how I did my feed, and so I just got really fed up with that.
Yeah.
And I've deactivated, and it takes 30 days. The only thing I haven't done is because I just haven't pulled the trigger and haven't figured out which company I want to use. But you cannot delete your tweets for free. You must
Oh,
pay
wow.
a third party to do that. And so I have to decide how I'm going to do that because I've got, close to 10,000 tweets, and I'm not going to sit there and go delete. Are you sure? Yes.
Yeah, I've got over
Delete. Are you
150,000.
sure?
That
Yes.
was never going to
So
happen.
yeah, I'm busy, and I'm way. Even if I wasn't doing shit, I'm way too busy to do that. So I think that you can. I think that the lowest price I saw was about $10. So I mean, I can get like the service and do a mass delete and get rid of them all, and just end the service. Just for
Yeah.
$10, get rid of all of them at one shot. But
But it
I was not aware that you could not delete your tweets for free. I was like,
No,
what the fuck? Serious?
I've
I got to
just
pay
learned that
someone to
now.
do
That's
this?
fucking mental. But it's just a snapshot of what's going on there. Like, all these right wing fuckwits who are just, they're literally giving a billionaire $8 a month for privilege. And they think, and they're the voices that are getting, lifted. And he's paying ad revenue to people with the most just egregious hot takes, because it's not about truth or veracity, it's not about interest, it's not about helping anyone, it's just literally about how much engagement you can drive. So the worst people with the worst takes are making the most egregious tweets and getting shitloads of engagement from other idiots, and subsequently, getting paid by Musk for the process. It's just, the whole thing has just become a parody of everything it actually stood for and everything that actually made it good. I mean, we knew that Musk was like the living embodiment of the Dunning-Kruger effect, but it's amazing just how quickly he's destroyed this place, and how thoroughly he's just made it. It's like every single decision has just been so fucking bizarre, like so self-destructive. It's amazing, really.
Mm-hmm. It's like he's doing it on purpose out of spite because he got picked on, and just it's the typical super rich mentality that if I can't beat it, I'll buy it and
Yeah,
destroy it from within. You
yeah.
know, and he's worst supervillain ever. you know.
in terms of deleting tweets, I understand, what Alan is saying in that, like, you don't want your Twitter account to be reinstated and then your tweets magically appear and then, who knows what they're going to use them for. You said like possibly training AI, which is not an unreasonable conclusion because I think Twitter have pretty much admitted to wanting to do that
Yeah.
anyway, or if not Twitter, then other similar companies. But Bob, you're talking about deleting your tweets, and so this is just a question out of complete ignorance. But like, if I go to at Bob Pastorella, then it basically says like, this account doesn't exist. So
Right.
like, doesn't that mean like your tweets have gone? Like, I guess I'm being a bit dumb here, but I feel like if the account doesn't exist, then they're probably not going to use your tweets. So, like, why do you need to, like, and then presumably to delete them, you'd have to temporarily reinstate the account and then delete them and then, you know, delete it again. Like, I'm not understanding why do you need to pay a
So if
company
you
to delete your
deactivate your
tweets?
account, you have 30 days before
Yeah,
it'll be completely deleted to where the name won't even be there anymore.
yeah,
But I could log in right now and all my tweets will be reinstated.
right.
Okay. So they're still there. Okay. So I'm not worried about other people seeing my tweets. I've never said anything that could be, used as a screenshot against me to try to cancel me or anything like that. I've been extremely careful on social media. I keep all my personal thoughts and things like that, usually to myself. That way I don't get fucking canceled for saying something stupid or taken misconstrued in the wrong way. But I don't want them to have my tweets. And so they probably already got them. It's for my own personal peace of mind that I've removed them from the server. That's where that would be, because even though they've got them and they've got them stored, and in 10 years when Twitter's down, there's gonna be that one guy and you call and you pay him like, hey, I'll give you $500, you get my tweets back, and he gives you a little a 3.5-inch disc. Here you go, buddy. It's on a flash drive. I found them on the net. One of those type things, but it's for my own personal peace of mind, that I just don't want them there. And so
I think that's the same. That's the same for me as well. It's that idea that if they're deleted, they're actually gone. But if they're not deleted, then that data exists in the Twitter servers. And you can't guarantee that if they are deleted, it is genuinely gone and they're not in a backup somewhere or something like that. But at least from that point forward, they're inaccessible. And that's the same when I say the only thing I'm really annoyed about is that I didn't get to do that before I left because they kicked me out. And that's what it is. It's that idea that all that stuff that I wrote is, and because, as well on Twitter, I would write these little kind of Twitter stories and stuff like that. I would thread these little horror stories together and all sorts of stuff. All of that was cool. It was fun. But they have said they've stated in their terms of service that if you tweet, you agree that your tweets will be used to train our language learning models and all that sort of stuff. And if my account's suspended, I don't know if the content of my account is still available to that database. I assume it is. Whereas if I'd had the opportunity to delete my tweets, then I would assume, or I would hope, that it's not available to that database. And that's the difference for me. So who knows at the end of the day really what exists or not out there. It's nothing I'm concerned about being public. It's just something I don't want to be used without my consent. AI is so much about just stealing stuff without consent and without compensation, and anything we can do to sort of push back against that is important, I think.
Yeah. No, that makes sense, because it sounds like for both of you it's a trust issue. It's like, you don't trust, even if in Bob's case it says this will be permanently deleted in 30 days. Bob's like, well, I'd rather permanently delete it now so
Yeah.
that I know that I have done my bit, because I guess if you had a trust issue to begin with, you don't necessarily believe that that is permanently deleted. Although it occurs to me as we're talking about this, and I guess one of us could even check, but I wonder if all of our tweets can't really be permanently deleted anyway, because maybe they exist on the Wayback Machine. Maybe we can just access all tweets there anyway.
Yeah, I mean, does the Wayback Machine save the entire Twitter database at some point? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know enough about it to be informed, I guess, is part of the problem. But yeah, anyway, in the same way that the ethical conundrum was taken out of my hands, so's this. And Blue Sky is an excellent. It's not a Twitter replacement, but it's the first time something else has felt a bit like how Twitter felt back in the day.
Right.
Lots of other things like Mastodon is just. I likened Mastodon to that thing where you go to play D&D with a new group and the guy spends the first hour just talking about the fine minutiae of the rules just because you wanted to switch from a sword to an axe. It's like, can we just play the fucking game? That Mastodon's really got that feel about it, and it's like, I can't be doing with this. And all these different things just sort of nothing really picked up. But then Blue Sky it's still restricted because it's under that invite model, but it has that feel the early Twitter had, and it's got a nice vibe. It's being a sort of a Twitter clone of a sort. It's got a very similar interface, and it's just, and to give a good example actually of what we were talking about with Twitter just turning to shit. I had 17,500 or so followers on Twitter, and subsequently now I've got probably 1,500 followers on Blue Sky. the engagement I get on Blue Sky is equal or better than the engagement I was getting on Twitter in the last 6 months, definitely. Just because I don't pay Elon Musk $8 a month, and nobody was reading my shit. No one could find it. I would never see stuff. You would post stuff, and people would never engage. You used to post stuff and have a chat and a laugh with people about all sorts of things, and it just slowly stopped happening on Twitter. And whereas on Blue Sky that is happening again, because there's not algorithms that are suppressing the sort of tweets of people who aren't paying for it. So yeah, I mean it really, it's like you're getting the same kind of interaction with a tenth of the followers, because it's not being destroyed. So yeah, it's an interesting situation we're in.
Yeah, so it sounds like at the moment the kind of main network to connect with you is Blue Sky. Is that right?
Yeah, well, I've got, so my website is alanbaxter.com.au, and there's everything you actually sort of need to know is there, and my email's there. But otherwise, in terms of social media, I'm still on Facebook, although I don't really like it. I've been on Instagram forever, and that's fun, but Instagram's not the sort of social network where there's a lot of engagement. And so it really does seem like Blue Sky is the place where there's actual engagement, where you chat to people and you have a laugh and you share stuff and you respond to stuff. That feels like that's the place where that's happening now. Facebook to some degree as well. But of the new stuff, at the moment it is very much feels like Blue Sky is the place to be. It's certainly the place I'm
Yeah.
spending more time than anywhere else at this point.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, you mentioned before the release of Sallow Bend, which was via Cemetery Dance,
Yeah.
and arguably your most Stephen King book, if one can, say such a thing. I guess one can, and that one was me, and I just did. But I mean,
It's
how
not just you.
did
Several
the
people have made that comparison actually, and I'm certainly not going to complain about that.
Yeah, how did both Sallow Bend itself come about, and then how did this relationship with Cemetery Dance, which is like if you're gonna have, your most Stephen King book, you can't get a much better publisher than Cemetery Dance. So talk us through both of these, and it's like kind of what came first, the book or the publisher, or is this like the chicken and the egg? No one actually knows.
It's an interesting. I hadn't really thought about it in that frame before, but I guess you're right. It's one of those, it's one of those strange situations that is a bit tricky to sort of pin down. But Sallow Bend was a book that I'd been meaning to write for some time. Like the central kind of conceit of the book, the main sort of thing that happened that sort of triggers everything off, was an idea I'd had for a long time and wanted to write it and hadn't got round to. And then I finally did get around to writing it, and it had a couple of false starts. But then once I'd finally got the whole book drafted, I was like, oh fuck, okay, this is great. This is actually really worked. It took me a long time to get to it, and I guess as well coming off the back of that all that pandemic stuff that we were talking about before. And it was the first sort of full length novel I'd written since The Gulp and all those sorts of things. And I honestly can't remember quite exactly how it happened or where the connection was, but probably just me being a cheeky fucker, because I tend to do that sometimes when I see the opportunity to chat to someone. And I ended up managing to ask Richard Cheesemeyer if he'd be interested to take a look at it. And he very kindly said that he would. And then round about that same sort of time, he got really busy with the whole chasing the bogeyman thing. And at a similar point in time, Kevin Lucia was sort of announced as the new editor-in-chief of the paperback line, and they were bringing back the Cemetery Dance paperbacks and all that sort of stuff. And so I sent Kevin a message and was like, I think this is awesome, Cemetery Dance doing, the paperback and ebook line again, because it's just, it feels like that's that real bread and butter vibe for Cemetery Dance. They do these amazing limited editions and hardcovers and whatever, but they're also that real sort of paperback publisher, like the Dorchester or the Leisure or the Zebra or whatever. They got that vibe about them. And I said, it's so awesome to hear that you're doing this. Rich has got a book of mine at the moment, and he's really busy. And this is me being cheeky again, but I would love to run through with you on the paperback line if you wanted to take a look at it. And he said, sure, I'll take a look. Let me talk to Richard about it. And like I said, I can't remember exactly how all the conversations started. They were all started with other situations that sort of led to that kind of opportunity. And Kevin read the book and enjoyed it and picked it up, and yeah, we were off to the races. And it's been my most successful book to date, which I'm really pleased about. It's done really well. It's been really well received.
And you said that you have other books now planned with Cemetery Dance too?
One more at this point. So my next novel, which is also another standalone horror novel, is a sort of supernatural horror novel. That's called Blood Covenant, and that's coming out with Cemetery Dance in May next year, May 24. So Kevin was kind enough to to buy another book off me. So obviously the whole situation with Sallow Bend went well enough, so that's good. And yeah, where things go from there, I don't know. The new novel that I've written that's with my agent that we talked about before, that is a slight departure for me because it's the first time I've written anything novel length that's not supernatural. It's a straight up kind of psychological thriller, and there is kind of a hint of a supernatural element to it that's sort of secondary to one of the characters. But the whole sort of drive, plot, process, all that sort of stuff is not supernatural. And that's the one that's with my agent now. So, who knows where things go? We're always sort of working, looking for opportunities and whatever. But I'm really pleased to be working with Cemetery Dance, and I'm really looking forward to Blood Covenant coming out in May, because I'm excited for people to get a chance to have a look at that one. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, do you find it quite difficult kind of classifying or marketing your fiction when you write such a broad range of things? I mean, I know that, like, when we first spoke with you, we talk a lot and joke a lot about you being the master of dark fantasy, as I believe it was dubbed on your website, or perhaps that was Grey Matter Press who came up with that. I'm not sure. But actually, like,
You
these
guys,
days, I mean, yeah, you seem to be gravitating further and further from dark fantasy, like it's more supernatural or straight horror, and obviously monster horror as well. So I don't know if this is like a curse or a blessing or one of these things, or it's a little bit of both.
yeah, I don't know. I like when I first started writing seriously, I was very much writing that like dark urban fantasy, it was, with the Alex Kane series, Realm Shift and Mage Sign, my first books were like that. Hidden City then was the book that kind of really bridged the gap between that magic and urban fantasy and horror, because the Hidden City, even though the entire Alex Kane trilogy and Realm Shift and Mage Sign, they've all got real dark elements. They've definitely got horror elements. I've always had that kind of horror undercurrent to everything that I do. Um, I did lean a lot on that dark fantasy, and then with Hidden City, I kind of leaned more towards the horror as well as the fantasy. And Clive Barker's always been the biggest sort of influence on me, and I love that concept of the dark fantastic, that weird sort of broken, creepy, but also magical, fantastical. He does that sort of stuff so amazingly well, and like The Great and Secret Show and Weave World and those sorts of things. But then he also writes things like Cabal and the Midnight Meat Train and that sort of stuff, and that's kind of where I've fallen in a way. And in some ways, it was a move from with the Alex Kane series and with Hidden City and stuff like that. These stories ended up building into these really great big, like world-threatening sort of threats that these people were kind of bringing back under control, which is that kind of fantasy element. There's always the big bad that can potentially, sort of destroy the world kind of thing. And I wanted to make I wanted to move away from that a little bit and tell more personal stories. And so when I wrote Devouring Dark, which was the novel after Hidden City, that was very much a novel about two people. And it had supernatural elements. It had that urban fantasy sort of vibe a little bit, but it was very much an urban horror novel. And in many ways, I think it was just because I tightened my focus. I tightened the lens in on characters instead of such a big story. Um, and I really enjoy that kind of stuff. And I really enjoy the weird stuff happening, the weird sort of small town horror stories and the real character driven horror stories and that sort of stuff. And so, in my mind, I'm still very much writing that weird, magical, fantastical, dark horror, whatever, still all in that same sort of sandpit. But in some ways, I guess just the focus changes a little bit. Um, and to be honest, with the latest book where I talked about it not being supernatural at all, because everything novel length I've written before has supernatural elements in terms of magic and monsters and whatever other supernatural things you can imagine. And it was my Australian agent, Alex Agset, who was like, if you wrote me a thriller, I could definitely sell it. I bet I don't think you can do it. I don't think you can write something that's not supernatural. And I was like, oh, really? Well, challenge fucking accepted. Thank you very much. Partly because I had in mind this book that I wanted to write that was very much more a sort of psychological thriller. And there was a supernatural element through it. And I was like, I'm just going to take that out and write the straight thriller. And the supernatural element sort of stayed in, but it's not actually supernatural. It's just something one of the sort of characters sort of dabbles in, but doesn't actually affect anything in the overall sort of events that go on. So it, and then there's the sort of the Southern Gothic noir Eli Carver books that are basically, a haunted hitman, and there's. And like you mentioned yourself, the military horror stuff I write for Snafu, but that's still magic, monsters, supernatural themes, cosmic horror, very much in a lot of those Snafu stories. So, to my mind, I'm still sort of writing largely the same stuff. It's always that sandpit that I'm playing in. It's just that where I focus specifically sort of changes a bit. I think that's what it feels like to me. Whether that's true or not, I don't know.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if you won or your agent won the bet because you took the supernatural out, but then you said you kept a tiny thread of it in. So it's like, does
And
that
that book
mean
is
it?
now picked up by the new agent, so it's like, yeah, the whole thing's fucked in many ways. So,
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I think she was just egging you on to make sure you absolutely wrote it, and then it's like, haha, look, I tricked you into us both becoming rich.
yeah,
But the twist is that you changed agent, and then she
yeah.
doesn't become rich, and it's like,
Well,
well,
yeah, but equally,
what you gonna
it will
do?
very much. I mean, obviously, the first thing will go to Bond Literary and how they deal with it. But with any luck, if once you get territorial, then hopefully
Yeah,
the Australia ANZ rights territory will hopefully still be managed by Alex from time to time as a sub agent anyway. So yeah, fingers crossed. Everybody, what would be best for me, what I would be happiest with, is if everybody still stays in the game and everybody benefits one way or another.
yeah, yeah. No, I think that's the way to do it, and I think in a broader sense, that's the way to do it with the horror genre as a whole. It can be tempting to be kind of competing against one another, competing against other authors, competing against other podcasts or whatever it is that you're in. But really, it's like if we, if one of us does well, then we all do well, is
Yeah,
essentially kind of what happens. We want to raise the profile and raise the game of horror in general.
yeah. I've never understood the mindset of competition. Like other authors, other publishers, other podcasters, none of these people are they're all allies against facing up to the same issues and the same problems. So a bunch of people reading my book is not suddenly going to stop them reading other books. Like we all read voraciously. Like you don't just have one author and go, no, I just read Alan Baxter. It's like I'm not taking all those readers away from everybody else, because even though I work hard and I can be quite prolific when I'm working hard, I'm still at best only putting out a book or two a year. And there are people out there reading 50, 100, 300 books a year. It's not like anyone's in competition with anyone else, but the more we can raise the profile of horror and dark fiction, the more we can raise the profile of podcasts and movies and books and all this sort of stuff that addresses this subject, the better it is for everyone. Because, if somebody gets the movie deal you wanted, that you're like, well, I really want a movie deal. It sucks. That guy got it. It was like, yeah, but if that guy got it, that means that you can too. Because if they got a movie deal and they're doing what you're doing, that's just proof that so can you. It's just, all you got to do is keep working hard and keep hoping for your opportunity to come around. A rising tide lifts all boats. The more we keep sort of horror popular, the more chance there is for everyone to succeed.
Yeah, that was exactly the phrase I was looking for about the rising tide and boats. But we're now into the sixth hour. It's like I'll just come out with something like that. We're all in a fucking boat, and there's the tide, and it's like, what? Are you hallucinating? What are you talking about?
The sea and about us together. I don't know. It's like somebody said about. With the pandemic bringing that back around, a lot of people were like, oh, we're all in the same boat, and somebody else was like, no, we're not. We're all in different boats, but we're all in the same storm. And I think that's something to bear in mind, is that everybody has very different experiences about this, but we are all in the same storm. And that's true with publishing. We might be in different boats, but we're in the same storm of publishing. So people have different privileges and different opportunities and advantages and whatever, and it's good to recognize that and to sort of make the most of what you can and help out other people where you can and whatever, because it's the storm we're all negotiating. So yeah, I think it's important to keep it in mind. If always comes back down to that same thing, if at the end of the day, if you can't be anything else, be kind. And in this industry, treating other people like your competition is not the kind approach, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll say personally, it's a good job that I didn't create loads of rivalries with other podcasts, because it's very handy for me when I've then got a book out to actually be able to go on the other shows. It's not like Neil from Talking Scared was like, no, fuck you. You started so much public shit. You were like, fuck Talking Scared. Me and Bob were the kings of horror. Tried to have a car park fight with him. No,
Yeah.
it
The
didn't
fight for the
happen.
pub and have a fight. Yeah, that's.
Yeah.
The kings of horror.
The kings of horror.
The thought of
very
me being associated with that is like ludicrous.
It's a very bro horror podcast name, The Kings of Horror.
The Kings of Horror. It's. I mean, I feel the same way y'all do. I mean, to me, the only person I compete with is myself. I want to get better. And I know that I'll never be as good as I can be, because that's the mindset you have to be. You always will be improving. And so it's for me to see, other writers. I quit subbing to get better. I was disgruntled with a lot of the process, but I quit subbing stories for 10 years to improve my craft, to get better. And I think a lot of that too, talking about, doing independent, doing it yourself, is I didn't want to do the work either. And I said, well, shit, I'm going to have to get really good. If I don't want to do the work and I want to have someone else do the work for me, then I'm going to have to get really, really good. And I'm still not at that point, and I'm a published writer, but I'm still, to me, it's like I've got room to grow. I'll always be growing. The only person I'm in competition with is myself.
Yeah, it's a really important thing to bear in mind, and it's something like writing and the martial arts are the two major things in my life, and they're both arts, and one of the things that I like the most about both of them is that it doesn't matter how much you achieve or how good you get. it's not a journey that ever ends. It's a lifelong path that you just continually learn and improve and develop. And at some point, hopefully, you can reach a point where you can help other people on similar paths develop, and you can be an influence on them as well. And just one of the things I like the most about it is that it it's something that you do that where there's no end in sight, because you can always get better, you can always improve, and that's where the passion in it lies. If you hit that point where you're like, oh, look, I don't think I can get any better at this, you're kind of losing the passion of what made you want to do it in the first place. And so, yeah, I always want more readers. I always want better deals. And that's because that to me is a sign that I'm better at what I do. And so I'm always striving to be better at what I do in order to, so it becomes this cyclical process, like if I can get as good as I can possibly get, then with any luck, I'll get as many readers as I can possibly get. And the more readers I have, the more it's going to push me to get better, and on it goes. And that's one of the things I love about it, is that drive to continually improve on what you had before. And it can become unhealthy sometimes. You have to keep thinking in perspective, but it's important, I think.
Yeah, I think if I reached a point where I can't get any better, then I would say, okay, I'm done with writing, or
Yeah,
I'm done with podcasting, or whatever it is. Because if I genuinely believe that I've reached the peak and this is optimal MDW, if one can imagine such a beautiful thing, then I would just quit. I would be like, right, well, I'll move on to the next thing. Writing, completed it, mate.
yeah.
Let's move on to the next thing.
Finish
But
that
yeah, I
book next.
don't think,
It's like
yeah,
so many
I
people in
don't think any of us.
sorry, I was going to say, so many people in the
What
martial
was that?
arts so many people in the martial arts, they look at the black belt and they're like, I want to get a black belt. So why do you want to get a black belt? Well, because that's like the ultimate. It's like, well, no, it's not. The black belt is just the start of a whole new journey. And it just proves that you got good enough to get a black belt. Okay, now here's where you get better. And our sort of mindset in the modern world is that we have to mark everything. There have to be levels. Like my style of kung fu is a very traditional style. It doesn't actually have belts. Like we use belts partly because it's expected in the Western mindset, partly because if governments do start legislating and licensing in certain ways, you need to have a sort of codified system in place or whatever. But even among the traditional arts that have always had a colored belt system and a black belt, once you get a black belt, you might go first dan, second dan, third dan. Once you've got the dan, even if you've achieved the top level of whatever grading system there is and you can't grade any further, you're still far from finished. You've just got to a point where you've gone, right, I've completed that part of the journey, and now all this stuff opens up for me. And that's something, if I manage to hit the New York Times bestseller list, so I would never go, yes, done it, I've won writing, I've completed it. It was like, okay, well, what's next? What else do I want? What else do I need? Where else can I improve? What award haven't I been nominated for? What list haven't I hit? What book haven't I written yet that I just really have this urge to write? It's like any level of achievement is just the start of the next part of the journey.
Yeah, and you're gonna confuse the hell out of other New York Times bestsellers like Josh Malaman and Paul Tremblay if you're like, I've completed it, and they're like, what, why didn't we get the memo?
Yeah, what are
We,
you talking about? I could have
we
stopped.
could
Yeah,
have stopped. It's finished. I've been writing for for a lot longer than that. But yeah, I think it's good that we have this thirst for self improvement and for
yeah.
always getting better. And in a way, I think it would be really liberating if I felt I had completed it. It's like, good, I can have a little rest now. But I don't think
Yeah.
it's reality. But fair play to people like Thomas Harris, who essentially do a few books and then they feel like, right, well, that's it. That has scratched that writing itch.
Well, it's easy to
I
do
mean,
that
that's
when you
great for
write a
them.
few books that make you a multimillionaire. So like it's easy to do. So, like, what else
Yeah,
do I want to do now
yeah.
that doesn't involve any work? How do I enjoy all this massive pile of cash that's sort of sitting in my garage? So it is. desperately trying to put food on the table is fucking motivating. But yeah, I'd like to think that no matter how much I did make at this, if I ever did get that kind of level of sales where you just potentially making millions, I I, I honestly believe that that drive to continue to tell stories would still be there. So it sure would be nice to not stress each day where the groceries are coming from and how you're going to pay the credit card each month. That would be a lovely achievement to reach. But equally, no matter where that was, I would still have the urge to continue to write these stories. I think. I hope that never goes away.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And to kind of give people like a realistic look at things, I mean, how much are you kind of fighting every month or every year? Like, what does the struggle look like? And, what, how much are you kind of working on a weekly, on a daily basis on the writing, obviously balancing that with the Kung Fu school as well?
Yeah.
And I mean, what do you do in those difficult times where you've got a month or you've got a period of times where it's like the money isn't coming in, but it needs to be coming in? I mean,
Yeah.
is there a
Well, I mean,
buffer that you've got as well? These are quite personal questions, but I think it's good for people to get an insight into the process and the lifestyle.
well, I am incredibly privileged on the one hand. We don't make very much money, so like reaching the bills can be a problem. Equally, an inheritance many years ago when my parents died does give us a buffer that means we're in a position where we can afford to take these risks. Um, so we're not close to destitute, but equally it is a struggle every month to cover everything. I get to be a writer and to run a kung fu school. My wife's a fucking brilliant artist, and we get to do those things, which is an enormous privilege. And it's taken us a long time to make enough money to be able to scrape by doing those things. It would be really nice to not just be scraping by on that front, but we do, and a lot of it, a lot of the writing income I get is not just royalties from books. I do appearances, I do workshops, I do talks, I do mentoring for a company. I work with a company called Spectrum Writing, where there are people who are aspiring writers or sort of emerging writers who are on the autism spectrum, and I work as a mentor with a number of those people to help bring their writing up. There's all sorts of things I do as well as writing books that are writing, but not just me sitting writing books. So a level of success for me would be a point where I can really pick and choose the sort of workshops or events I do because I don't have to do them to promote my work, and I wouldn't have to do the extra mentoring and stuff for the extra money that brings in, because I could cover the bills just from book sales. That would be amazing. It's just not reality at this point. So there's it's like we've said before with my wife and I, that with the painting and the writing and the kung fu school and everything else, none of it makes a living, but all of it together just about scrapes us by because we're in a position where we have this sort of privileged kind of foundation. So it's none of it's easy, but we are in a position where we are in a lot better off than someone who has to have a full-time like 9 to 5 or even more kind of job and is trying to fit writing around that. We've been able to create a situation with hours that are a lot more compatible to what we want to do. And yeah, as I said, it would be really nice to make enough doing that we could not worry about the bills and put some aside all the time, because you do your best not to think about retirement funds when you're a creative person because there's no superannuation in this job or anything. So yeah, that's something that can keep you awake at night sometimes wondering where that's going to go. So with any luck, my kid will become super successful and just be just afford the best care home for us at some point. You never know. It's a bit of a gamble relying
Yeah.
on that, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that, like, the act of writing and creative arts and, painting, it is inherently quite optimistic anyway, and that's kind of why we keep doing it, because you know we're like, well, what if, or why not me? If I keep doing this, then perhaps a book or like a film deal will come along and will change my life, and maybe it will, maybe it won't, but if you keep creating, then you're maximizing your chances. It's like kind of buying another ticket to the lottery, as it were. You're giving yourself another chance for success.
That's it. I mean, that it really is true. That really is the insane hope of all creatives, really. But in the process of that as well, if you do work hard and you build a backlog and you build a reputation, then that long tail of work that you have and that you do does slowly increase and improve with what's going on. And with any luck, even if you don't get the big sudden New York Times bestseller, or you don't get the movie deal or whatever else, if each thing that you do reaches a few more people than the thing before, and some of those people go back and check what you did before, and then the next thing you do reaches a few more, and you have this slow incremental build, that at some point, I do make more of a living as a writer now by a significant amount than I did 10 years ago. And I'm still fucking poor in terms of cash flow, but it is a noticeable difference on what it was 10 years ago. And so, you kind of, you trust in the process to some degree, that's going to be something that continues if you continue to work and continue to build and grow. So, and you hope to have things to fall back on if you can't. Like, I could teach more classes if I needed to. I could take part-time jobs if I needed to, and it's ideal not to have to do that. And I could take on more mentoring, editing, all that sort of stuff. But anything that you do like that to pay the bills does take time away from writing. And so, and then, to use your analogy, then you're buying fewer tickets that way into that hopeful future. So it's the whole process is a real weird sort of balancing act, and it's certainly not a stress-free way to live. But you kind of believe in yourself and believe in hope, and you live the life you want to, or you don't.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, in terms of like kind of so-called retirement funds, I mean, the way I think about it as well is like with my writing, this is like a lifelong pursuit for me. So I can't imagine, however old I get, being like, oh, that's it, I'm going to stop writing now. I mean, if there's so many writers that they literally wrote until the day that they died. And if you look at like directing and things, like Clint Eastwood is still
Yeah,
going at it now.
yeah.
um so I mean, one would hope, as you say, like, I mean, the larger your back catalog, the more kind of passive income from decades worth of work previous you're going to get. And even if you're just like adding a new book, like even like, let's say every 2 years, because at that point you're getting on here, maybe you're 80 or something. So like 2 years is about right. But if you've got like decades of work before, it's probably going to be sustainable.
Well, this is the hope. Yeah, this is the plan. And so, if all the time you continue to work towards that goal, then all the time it sort of appears to be working, then roll with it. But if you lose the passion, or things crash in certain ways or whatever, I guess you need to have, some sort of contingency plan in mind. But yeah, you know, we pursue the dream, chase the dream. I'd rather be poor and chasing
Yeah.
the dream than sitting here paying the bills every month going, fuck, I wish I had, I wish I this, I wish I that.
Yeah. Yeah, well, people often say, at the end of one's life, it's the shots that you didn't take, the opportunities that you didn't take, that you regret, rather than regretting things you tried and failed at. I mean, if you try and fail, then you've got an answer.
That's it. Yeah, I would rather try and fail than never try.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. Well, as we're talking about like getting older, this is a strange segue, but I know that in the time since we've last spoke, you turned 50. And often when we kind of enter a new decade, it's like an opportunity for reflection and taking stock. So I'm wondering, have there been any kind of pivotal changes since then, or is it business as usual? Bob's giving a look like, if you said that to me, I'm gonna knock you out. I don't even know.
I mean, you reassess things to some degree. Like I, many years ago, I sort of had this goal in mind. I want, and it's such a nebulous and immeasurable thing anyway, but it's like, I want to be successful at this gig by the time I'm 50. And it's like, well, how do you measure that? Like, am I successful
Yeah,
because I'm making a comfortable full-time living at it? In which case I didn't achieve it. Am I successful that I'm still doing it? Well, yeah, and I'm doing better than ever at it. It's like, I it's difficult to draw these sort of, and it's dangerous in a way as well to put these kind of very specific markers into things. um, I must admit that age is not something that ever really, it was never really much on my radar until I became a parent. And then all of a sudden, your brain kind of automatically does this maths. Like every time there's a report on the news of some celebrity death or something, they'll say so and so dead at 64. My brain just automatically goes, kid would be 21. Like my brain automatically does the math of age, which it never did before. And so in some ways, I didn't give a shit about turning 30 or turning 40. I never even noticed it. But I for the first time, it felt like I really noticed it when I turned 50. And it's like, well, I mean, I guess that's, it's half a century. It's not an insignificant fucking age. But also, it was the first time I'd had one of those decade markers as a parent as well. And that my perspective on age kind of really changed on that front. And both my parents died pretty young, in their 60s. My mum was 62, my dad was 67. Um, and my brain just bang, bang goes how old my kid would be at those ages, sort of thing. So I, in the same way that it was never really much on my radar before, it isn't really now, generally speaking, but it was the first time I ever noticed one of those decade tick overs with any kind of real gravity to it. And I think it, more than the age or where I'm at, it was the first time one of those had happened as a parent, because I was 43 when my kid was born. So, I came to parenthood quite late in that respect. But I don't know. I don't really sort of set those goals, sort of age-based goals anymore. And like you said yourself, this is not something I'm ever going to age out of, short of, physical decline or Alzheimer's or who knows what else. I've got every intention to just carry on doing this indefinitely. And even with the Kung Fu side of things, there'll be a point where my body's not really up for the hardcore sort of martial arts training anymore, but there's the Qigong and Tai Chi side of what we do. That again is something I can pursue for as long as, I'm able to stand up out of a chair. So, I don't really see either of those things changing in any way. So I don't really apply much in the way of age to it anymore. I think I've only got, the only real goal I have is to just be around for as long as possible for my kid to have a parent, a father for as long as possible, and ideally to outlive my parents. It's fairly short-term goals in those respects, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And in terms of the martial arts, I mean, I think that Joe Lansdale still does
Yeah,
martial arts to a point, and he's 71. So,
that's it.
that
Mhm.
I tell you, the one difference that you
he
notice
yeah,
on that
doing,
front is that I still do the same stuff that I did before, and I'm far from the sort of physical peak I was at in my 20s when I was fighting a lot and competing a lot and all that sort of stuff. But I'm still capable of doing most of what I did then. But the one thing that you really notice is the injuries, and I don't get injured any more often than I used to. But it's the sort of lifestyle that's, injury is inherent in the lifestyle. But when I was in my 20s and 30s and something would happen, and I'd be like, well, fuck, that's going to bother me for 2 or 3 weeks. Now, when it happens, it's like, oh, fuck, that's going to bother me for at least 2 or 3 months, because it's that healing time that takes longer. So something you do to yourself that you would have got over in a few weeks before, is going to hang around for a few months. And then that means that the next thing's probably going to happen before that's healed. And so you start to get these sort of overlapping injuries. And so that kind of management of your physical condition becomes a much more important thing, and that restricts what you can do more than age itself. That sort of expansion of healing time becomes a real issue. Like, I blew out the meniscus on my knee a few years ago, and it was nearly a year before I could use it properly again. And so trying to teach and train around that for a year that's a significant challenge when it's part of what you do for a living. So that's the only place that the age really factors in at this point. And despite that, I've got no intention of slowing down. I love what I do, and I have every intention to be just like Joe Lansdowne and everyone else, and still throwing hands at conventions when I'm 75 or whatever. I'm up for it. I don't mind.
Yeah. Yeah. And I totally relate on the injury front because, like, unfortunately, like, I have arthritis,
Yeah.
and I've had that like most of my life. Like, I think it was formally diagnosed when I was 18, and I've kind of got that in remission mostly through like a gluten-free diet and restricting sugar. But like as I get older, like I have to be more and more strict, and yeah, anytime I injure myself, it just takes months for it to get better. Like, to the point where I like working out, but as you may be able to tell from like the way that I approach writing and podcasting, I'm not good at doing things by halves. Anything I do, I will push myself. So it's I'm generally not lifting weights anymore because it's better for me to do calisthenics and body weight exercise, with the exception of like a limited amount of like kettlebell stuff, because I will just push myself and then I will injure myself and then I'll just be annoyed. So yeah,
Yeah, it's a real issue. And
it's
something else
difficult though, because
Yeah. And something else I've discovered as I've got older as well is that the injuries that you did get when you were younger that you didn't think too much of come back as arthritis when you're older. And so it's like that toe you broke in competition, or that shoulder you dislocated. It's like, you popped it back, you didn't worry about it, it was sore for a few weeks. And then you hit 42, 44, and all of a sudden you're like, why the fuck does this just hurt? And then you realize, oh, that's what I did 20 years ago, and now I've got arthritis there. And so you just feel that forever now. Also, that's something that's always going to be there, and then that toe thing is just always going to be there. I'm glad I won the fight, but it's just now I get permanent reminder of that competition, like 25 years ago or whatever. So yeah, it's but these are also this is the physical history of a life well lived as well. So I try not to get too I try not to get too annoyed about it, because these are the my teacher refers to bandages as uniform and bruises as medals. So like, you turn
yeah,
up and you got something strapped up, and he's like, you're wearing a uniform, you've been training hard, and it's like, you earned a medal today. And so yeah, it's like, it's true. The knocks and things that we take, the scars that we bear, are that's the history of our lives written on us. So
yeah. Yeah, it's quite like the shock to the system when you first go to the doctor about something like, let's say, like, oh, yeah, you got lower back pain, and you're like, right, well, what can I do to get rid of this? And he's like, eh, you're just getting old.
nothing
And
really.
just that just happens.
Yeah,
That's just part of you now.
yeah.
So yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
You're old.
try
I
not
don't
to
know what to
aggravate it.
say.
It's like this bear that lives inside you. Just
Yeah.
try not to wind it up. It's like, oh, well, fucking hell, okay.
Yeah. But
It's
but
like
but honestly, that's how I found like the gluten-free diet, because like, with the arthritis, I just had to keep taking more and more pills. And like it got to a point where I was taking 10 prescription drugs a day. I was injecting myself with methotrexate once a week, which is
Wow.
also in higher forms an anti-cancer drug. And I went to the doctor, like I'm 21 at that time, and I'm like, what are we doing to get better? Like, this is like a kind of plaster, a band-aid, but what are we doing to actually heal? And because you keep upping the medication, and I feel if I'm taking 10 tablets a day, that doesn't sound good for my overall lifespan. And he's like,
Yeah.
well,
How many are you going to be
this
taking at
is
50? You
how.
know?
Yeah, and he's like, this is how it is. So like he said that my personality was like, right, I reject that.
Yes.
So like I started like researching different things and was very desperate because like I'm in pain all the time at this point. I can't walk anywhere without hobbling. So I'm basically like, look, if this continues, I'm gonna be in a wheelchair, not just before 30, but before 25. And so I will try anything. And like, for some reason, like, I hear about people who had gone vegan and they'd had good success. So I'm like, right, well, fine, we'll give that a go. But during like that, I got concerned about like, where's the protein? Where are my protein sources? So I'm Googling vegan protein sources. Somehow I end up on a website called the Primal Blueprint, which is basically advocating for the paleo diet. So it's almost the opposite of vegan. It's like eat a lot of meat and fish and
Just
eggs. I mean,
flesh.
it's basically whole foods. And then kind of the like pitch of the guy, Mark Sisson, who owns the website is like, try this for 30 days. Try it strict for 30 days. And, if there's no improvement, then what have you lost? Well, you've lost 30 days. But so I was like, right, fine. So obviously not a committed vegan at all. I'm only doing it to try not to be in any pain. So I believe my first thing to do was buy an entire rotisserie chicken. So that was a sharp jump from veganism. And tried it for 30 days and had so much less pain, came off all of the medication. And like, here we are. It's like if I eat gluten or I eat sugar, then I feel some pain, but yeah, just don't eat it, and it's as if I don't have arthritis. But unfortunately, the older I get, like if I deviate just a little bit, then
Yeah.
it's like not only more painful, but it takes longer, for me to even recover from it. But it speaks a lot to the power of diet. And so, when I say like this needs to be gluten free, this isn't a fad, this isn't me trend saying, this is like, no, I will be in pain if it
Right.
ain't gluten free.
I think people are learning
You
a
know,
lot more about diet and its influence on physical and mental health, the gut biome and all that sort of stuff. It's different. People are definitely, within Chinese medicine, they've got this principle of preventive. Like traditionally, if you lived in the village, everybody would pay the doctor a certain amount every week. And if you
Mm,
got sick, you stopped paying until you were better again. So it was in the doctor's best interest not to make you better when you got sick, but to stop you getting sick in the first place. And so it was the doctor would advocate healthy diet and exercise and all these sorts of things. So we have this kind of ass backwards approach to it these days, but it's a good way to think about things. That's the more you can do to maintain a healthy state from the outset, then the less you have to do to fix shit that goes wrong. And people are coming back around a lot to that idea that diet, doesn't have to be really strict in any particular direction, but experimenting to figure out what sort of diet works best for you and what has the best results to make you feel better and not get sick, then that's good, right? And so it stops people relying on pills to fix things when they can rely on food to not need the pills in the first place.
yeah,
yeah,
I'm going
yeah.
through that with my diabetes. I had, I guess, an old fashioned doctor for, about 10 years and had me on two insulins and several pills. and always, advocated, hey, you need to lose weight. And it's very, very difficult to lose weight when you're shooting up that much insulin, um, which I did not know. And so my doctor retired, and, I informed him that I was, I'd found another doctor and was going to go see them on the last time I went and seen him. And he said, well, he goes, they're more modern than me. And he said they're gonna change up a lot. They're gonna change up a lot. And he goes, and I think it may be what you need. And so I went to them in January, and they put me on Ozempic, which I know there's a lot of controversy about that, but I've lost 30 pounds. Um, I have reduced from 2 insulins to 1 insulin, and I'm pretty sure within the next 6 months I'll probably be off insulin. So that kind of ruins the whole myth that once you get on, that you're on it forever. Okay. And so that's not true. Basically, it's like they did so much blood work to determine, hey, you actually are still making insulin, even though you've been shooting up this insulin in your body for the last 10 years and taking these pills. Your pancreas is still producing very effective insulin. So we're going to make you lose weight. We're going to force you to lose weight to make your pancreas, we're going to kick your pancreas back into overdrive to where it's actually going to work. We're going to wean you off of insulin, and then we're going to take you off of Ozempic. The rest will be up to you. But this is what we're going to do.
No,
And
good
so
for
they
you.
want to, they're seeing me every 3 months, and they're like, we want to see you every 6 months after all this, and then maybe once a year. Well, we don't want you here all the time. The idea is to try to give you a better lifestyle. So I'm like, okay, well, I finally found a doctor who actually cares that they don't want you to be on all these chemicals. So the injuries that I've had in the past, that if I bang my knee, that when I was on insulin and I was overweight, if I banged my knee that I messed up 30 years ago, I would literally vomit. So the other day, I mean, it was, if I hit it hard enough, it'd make me throw up. And so the other day when I was at work and I hit my knee pretty much the same way, and I was like, no big deal. And even my friends who I've worked with for 10 years, they're like looking at me going, dude, that's your bad knee? I'm like, yeah, I'll be fine. Didn't hurt that bad. It's like those injuries, they're not, because I'm healthier, I'm able to do things, and I'm 56. I don't feel like I'm 56. I don't know what, I've never been this old before, so I don't know how I'm supposed to fucking feel. Right. I still feel like I'm 20 years old. But man, when those old injuries, which you were talking about, I mean, when I was overweight, those things would kick my ass,
Yeah.
bang my knee the wrong way. It's like, shoot, man, I want to go home.
Yeah. I've always maintained that there are 3 ages. That you've got your chronological age, which you can't do anything about because that's just time passing. There's nothing you can do about that. But then you've got your mental age and your physical age as well. And both of those things you can affect. Like your physical age with exercise and with diet and with everything else, you can affect how fast your body ages. And with your mental age, how much you engage your mind, you can deal to some degree with how much your brain ages, but also your mental attitude to things. And not just going, well, I guess I'm 40 now, so I need to accept this, that, and the other. No, fuck it. I mean, you make smart decisions, but the way you choose to engage with the world and the way you choose to use your body and treat your body, you have a significant amount of control over those 2 things. So, and people are kind of trained into thinking they don't, and it pisses me off. I mean, as a lifelong martial artist, I've kind of always been aware of the mental discipline, the physical discipline, and stuff like that. But people kind of have this mindset where they're like, well, I'm this age now, therefore I should be. And it's like, but fuck that. It's like, you decide, you have no control over the actual passing years, but everything else is, you have control. You have some control over that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we're all in agreement and kind of fits in terms of what you were saying about the Chinese medicine and the doctor in the village. But I mean, unfortunately, like, to be really cynical at the moment, the way that the pharmaceutical industry works in the West, particularly in America, but I think it's infecting other countries as well, is like they will get commissions for pushing different drugs and different brands of drugs. So
Sick and keep
it's
buying
kind of
drugs
in
to turn
their
into a
best
dollar.
yeah, yeah. So it's in their interest, it's in big pharma's interest to kind of, just put these like band-aids on you rather than teach you about these healthy habits and these processes that will actually, enable you to actually thrive and to be better and to be fitter. And
Yeah.
as I'm saying this, I'm thinking it would be fucking funny if somehow this podcast got banned because like he's speaking out about big pharma. This is horror
Forget
have done
about them,
it.
man.
It's like, we could talk about all the kind of torture methods in the world. We can talk in great detail about chapter 22 in House of Bad Memories, but don't you start criticizing big pharma or you're going to be in
Don't
trouble. But,
mention guillotines either.
you know, yeah, yeah. So I'm glad that you've mentioned it again. So hopefully the algorithms are like searching, they're going absolutely nuts. I'll just have to throw in some other keywords like Snowden and Julian Assange, and whoa, now it's
It's
gone
all over
crazy
the
now. What am I doing? uh, but I mean, in terms of like your mental and physical health, what things are you personally putting in place to stay on top of that? Because I mean, I think it is something we should talk more about. It is something that writers are obviously concerned with because this is not only a solitary pursuit, but it is a pursuit where we're spending a lot of time just sitting in a chair and typing or writing.
It's incredibly unhealthy if you're not careful. It's solitary and it's sedentary. Um, I spend so many hours right here, but the the sort of the yin and the yang to that for me is the martial arts, because I love to train still. I love to still practice martial arts. I love to teach because I love the feedback that it gets when you see students improving. But equally, the privilege of teaching is that it also means that I have to get out of this chair and I have to go and interact with other people. And so, I teach classes here, there, and everywhere through the week, where I socialize and I move and I'm physical and whatever else. And I take the dogs for walks on frequent occasions. And when I don't just stroll along with the dogs, but I have a vigorous fucking walk, because if I can take the dogs out for an hour and get that passive exercise that goes along with that, I try to encourage, as the weather warms up again now, as it's starting to, we live about sort of 2 or 3 Ks from my kids' primary school. So I try to encourage riding the bicycle there together rather than taking the car, stuff like that. So for me, the martial arts, the practice of the forms, the memory of the forms, the teaching and the passing that knowledge on, the physical act of training, as well as the qigong and the tai chi and the meditation that comes with that, all of that stuff is a job. But one of the great benefits of that job is it also is the perfect antidote to the other job, which is just sitting right here. And I try to take incidental exercise wherever I can. So, if I've got work to do in the garden, I won't just sort of potter about at it. I go hard at it and go, well, if I smash I've got to cut the grass, I've got to mow the lawn. It's like, well, I could stroll up and down listening to a podcast, or I could just bang, bang, bang and pound. So how fast can I mow the lawn and get the exercise out of it? So and I'm a really big believer in sort of incidental exercise, and always taking the stairs and not the escalator. Always, if you're going for,
Yeah,
one of the dogs are one of the, I tend to prefer the company of dogs to people most of the time. They're amazing. But apart from anything else, if you have a dog, you have to, at least once a day, for that dog's health, you have to go for a walk. So if you're going to walk the dog, walk vigorously, and walk briskly so that you get the exercises. So yeah, that works well for me. And I do, even when I'm doing writing and I'm sitting here for hours at a time, I try to frequently stretch and move, and I'll push the chair back, stand up. drop on the floor and do 10 push-ups and 10 squats and sit back down and carry on when I have that little brain gap, because I'm aware of the fact that sitting still for too long is not good for me. And so I try to actively move around. I have a little counter thing, a timer thing that's that's an app that will just go off every 30 minutes, and you can snooze it, stop it, or
Mm.
just let it roll. And so whenever it goes off, even if I'm in the middle, I'll be standing like this, and I'll stand up, and I'll just, it makes me move around while I'm doing stuff, even if I don't want to break the flow of that thought. And if I feel like I can break, I might literally get up, walk around the house, squat, push, go, sit down again. I think all that stuff's really
Yeah.
important. So yeah, but it's habit forming, and you have to actively make it a habit. So you need to find some sort of physical activity that you enjoy doing. If you have to do it and you're forcing yourself, you're not going to do it. You find something that you enjoy doing, and then you get into the habit of doing that thing frequently, and then you get the exercise and the physical health benefit from it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the problem, for some people, or I would say for the vast majority of people, is just getting started. And then, like, if they're not exercising a lot, and they're like raising the bar too high, they're thinking, well, I don't have an hour in the day to exercise. And it's like, that's okay. Just do one push up or
Mm,
one squat. If you can't do a push up, just do a wall push up.
yeah.
Because if you go down and you can be bothered to do one, you're like, okay, fine, I'll do two.
Oh,
Maybe I'll do three. And like, just literally, you know saying that, like, right, I commit to doing a minimum, like, set something absurd that you can definitely do. Like, I'll do one wall push up a day. Okay, well, I can do that. So then suddenly it becomes like 10 wall push-ups, or 20, or suddenly it becomes like 5 regular push-ups. It's just about like scaling and building. And
yeah.
if you miss a day, or whatever, then like not being harsh to yourself. I mean, personally, for me, I found, because like I'm so susceptible to injury, I'm also slow to recover. So typically at the moment, it's like, right, I've got my pulling day, I've got my pushing day, I've got my leg day, I've got my abs day, and then I've got like a few just general like movements or stretching days where I'm not doing so much. But yeah,
It's
like,
habit forming as well. It takes about 30 days to form a habit, but if you push yourself to do that little achievable thing every day, after 20, 25, 30 days, it does start to become a habit, and it's very easy to continue then. And it's very easy to sort of
yeah,
push that increase and increase that load and strive to be better, like we talked about before. It applies to everything in life. And it's like the blank page. Fuck it, just start typing. It's like, the exercise, fuck it, just
yeah,
start walking. Anything is, you start, and then after you start and you make it a habit, after 2, 3, 4 weeks, it becomes a habit, and then you just keep that habit, and it becomes healthier. And then it's much easier to improve on something that exists than to start something in the first place.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for chatting with us, and thank you too for the awesome blurb that you gave me for House of Bad Memories, and for reading that wild ride.
No worries. Good luck with it. It's a great book. I hope it goes gangbusters for you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Do you have any final thoughts or things you would like to leave our listeners with?
No, not really. Do your best. Be kind. Come and find me on Blue Sky. How's that?
There you go. Thank you very much.